You wanna grow and go and get there, sometimes upward, sometimes nowhere. You've got the ideas, you're looking up at the clouds, but how do you start standing out of the crowd? So build it with us from the ground up.
Hey everybody, welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm Zach Conway. I'm here with my co-host Kelsey McKenna. What's up, Kelsey?
Not much. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm doing great.
Are you just excited?
I'm a little exhausted.
Are you excited to talk about this topic?
Yeah, of course. I'm always excited to talk about all of these topics.
Yeah.
But
But you're tired?
but I'm a little bit
You're
tired.
bringing the energy. I love it.
Hey, sometimes you just have to, snap into it and do it. So we're here doing it. All right, well, we'll jump into it. What are we covering today? I think this is basically an extension of our conversation from last time, right?
Yes.
We got to do a lot of things right as advisors, but what's the one thing after you get all that stuff right that you don't want to get wrong?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you're saying getting stuff right, we're talking about kind of like we're trying to win a new client, right? We're bringing somebody in, whether they were referred to us or they saw some marketing, they came across our website, they Googled, however they got to us, they're coming in the door. And we're trying to really close that prospect if they're a good fit for the firm. Right. And we want to talk about what is one of the things that we see going wrong a lot of the times where advisors, they do all this great work to attract the right type of client and set expectations. And then there's just one thing that can go pretty wrong. So.
Yeah. To frame it up a little bit, we have this headline that really upset us when we read it. So I'm going to read it for the audience, kind of tease up the conversation. So it's a Bloomberg headline that says, with banks offering 5% returns, financial advisors are fighting irrelevance. So Kelsey, as you said, it's like we do all these things and running our business the right way as advisors. It's set up the right way. Somebody walked into our door, and what is their expectation of our value? Somehow it's about our ability to get them a good return in their stock and bond portfolio. Mm-hmm. It's not about all the other stuff we actually are intended to do and the value we deliver around holistic financial planning and being their therapist and making sure they don't make silly decisions with their money and, having that deeper relationship. Bloomberg says it's about beating the 5% return that, treasuries can get you.
Well, they're saying that's so why like they're basically connecting the two together, Right.
So how can that be, right? We're an industry that's been existed for quite a while, not necessarily as long as many other industries, but 50 plus years as an industry. And that's sort of the perception of what advisors deliver to the market. And so trying to understand why is that, right? If we look back in time, trying to unpack what got us to this point, 2023, that there's this assumption that that's what we're actually delivering as advisors. Again, it's not about not getting performance. We have to get good performance in portfolios to help people reach their long-term goals, do all of these things from a planning perspective. But why is that like the nexus, most, valuable thing that the market thinks we deliver? Or that is our differentiator relative to each other. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about before, we have dads who have both been in the industry as advisors, and we've had conversations with them, like their perspective on, you look back at the beginning of the industry, what sort of got us here? But I don't know if you have sort of thoughts on that.
No, yeah, I do want to talk about what got us here because I do think like it's both. It's still the fact that advisors are, in many cases, many times, they're setting themselves up for failure in this area because they think this is their differentiator. They think this is how they have to justify what they're doing or explain what they're doing on the investment side. So there's that, but then there's also the historical context that what do you expect of your financial advisor? What does your advisor actually do for you? And I think that's interesting. Maybe you could share what Mike, your dad, what his take was on this, because I do think he kind of laid it out pretty nicely.
Yeah, I think so. In conversations with him and just sort of reading the history of the industry, when financial planning as a concept came to the market, it was sort of a new concept to go explain to customers, right? We're gonna do this thing called financial planning. These are the benefits. People were like, what? I don't understand exactly what that means, because it really didn't exist in that holistic framework before. Mm-hmm. And so, even these firms like my dad was building at the time, earlier on in the industry, that were trying to focus on financial planning, it was easy to lean back over toward,
Yeah.
the greed is good Wall Street stockbroker narrative of,
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to do all these great holistic things from a financial planning perspective that you don't really totally understand yet. And we're going to get you a really great return in your portfolio, better than the next guy or gal down the street. So there was this sort of like easier fallback to the, fear and greed, emotional sell, simply because it was easier, right? And because it was a little bit not understood, obviously at the beginning, still isn't now, but not understood from the customer back at the beginning. And so that groundwork, it's like we've talked about, it's embedded in our DNA. It was there at the beginning, even though the spirit of planning is not about that, we still kind of did it. And so because we did it, because that was always part of the script, we have just pulled that through all the way through today. And again, it's such a bummer because advisors intuitively know that's not what makes them different relative to each other. The fact that we in our RIA in New Jersey think we can, outsmart Warren Buffett in the market and do better picking stocks or building a portfolio than the advisor across the street is so silly. Mm-hmm. It's so obviously silly. And again, we know, especially now at this stage of the industry, it's not why the person's walking in our door. They have a legitimate problem. They have fears about their financial future. We know the best way to address them. But for some reason, we still default to that, performance narrative, that better money management narrative. And the real bummer of it is it just tees us up for failure in the future, right? We're sort of kicking the can in the relationship to cause an issue, right? Because now that's what you're selling me. So that's what I expect. I expect to talk about the performance. I expect that it's going to do better. And of course, when it doesn't, or when the markets just go a direction you don't want them to go, well, hey, you told me that's what you're good at. That's what you sold me. That's part of why you told me to buy you. Mm-hmm. So what gives?
So you're not delivering.
And again,
yeah,
you're not delivering. And you can be doing all the other great stuff. You then discount every aspect of all of it when the S&P has a rough quarter, because you planted that seed at the beginning of the relationship when they walked in your door that's part of what you're so special at doing. Mm-hmm. And so, so that's when we talk about getting everything else right. And then you have that moment, and we're talking about a moment, right? The beginning of the relationship, and framing yourself in that way can destroy all of it, which is a bummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even if it doesn't destroy it, it can make it a lot more difficult. It can make that relationship a lot more tumultuous, because even if they stick with you, they're harder to satisfy. It's harder to deliver on your promise throughout that relationship. And there is, the burden of not only being responsible for overall helping them meet their financial goals and being that trusted partner and all of the things, the psychology behind it and all that stuff, but also, are the returns as good as they can be, which is not completely within your control. I really care about this, within our business too. Like it applies to any business, really. Just making sure that upfront, what you're selling and what you are saying, the value that you deliver and what's different about you and what you're here to do, that you can carry that all the way through the entire relationship, and that it's actually in your control, as much of it as possible is within your control to deliver it, because that's really what does, make a happy customer at the end of the day.
That's what's so sort of odd about it too, or one of the reasons it's odd is there is so much immense value. Again, every advisor you talk to knows how much immense value we can deliver to our customers, and we just sprinkle in this other component
that's commoditized,
that is inherently commoditized, that then destroys the perception of the value of all the other things, right? So as a early stage company, to your point, it's like thinking about as a wealth tech platform, there's so much value we believe we're delivering to our users. Why it seems odd that we would tell a different story, right? Or add on to it in a way that isn't actually reflective of the thing that we're providing. So yeah, just leaning into, this is what we're good at. And what makes you different is your ability to be good at those things. That's what makes you different. There's all sorts of different sort of nuances to differentiation. You can have niche, focuses of clients, really specialized services, all of those things. That's certainly differentiation too. But what's different broadly about you is how good of a therapist are you, a advice giver and communicator, and someone who can deeply understand the people who walk in their door. That's what you got to be selling. Yeah. Not that you beat the S&P last quarter, because when you don't next quarter, it's kind of a bummer conversation. And you're right, by the way. So you're not going to destroy your business. That was maybe a little bit strong of a term, but every advisor also knows it could, right? Yeah. It is possible. Or I would argue it is the ultimate outcome, right? So if that's something you don't break away from, it's the ultimate outcome. But it does exactly what you said, which is it just pulls that bummer through the rest of the relationship forever. Yeah. Until you fire that person or they fire you.
Yeah.
And a lot of advisors, you could talk to advisors who know intuitively that they told a little bit of that differentiation story on day one, and who those clients are across their book of business that latched onto that, that literally said, that's why I want you. And where in that first meeting, you really like fed that beast and told that story. And, oh yeah, by the way, we got these super credentialed people down the hall. I'll introduce you to them too, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows who those clients are. And then every review meeting you have with them is like, oh God, I got to go talk to so-and-so and pull in these reports and show them how we're doing all these whatever things that in your heart of hearts as an advisor is just noise. It's just nonsense. And so, it maybe doesn't destroy it, but yeah, it pushes it forward in all of those relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it is, like, to your point, it's really hard to stop doing this. Like, that can be one of the scary things, I think, for advisors. We talk to a lot of advisors who are kind of veering away from that story, and that being part of their like standard pitch, or how they talk about their business, or how they talk about what they're doing and what services they provide. What advice would you give as just like a starting point? Like, where do you start with this in terms of, I know we've talked a little bit about like evaluating your current process and like what expectations are you setting? So maybe you could speak a little more about that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a couple of things. I would say, who are you selling to? Because there is, you can find a persona client base that is very specifically seeking that story, right? They have a analytical mindset, they're returns driven, they're FOMO brain type clients, and they're out there and they're easy to sell, right? The general point is like, you want to go tell that story and do that tap dance about how you do something special in a portfolio that's all BS. You can go tell it and you will find and attract those people. So are those the people in your book of business? That's the kind of hard gut check of like, who did I attract? Yeah. Who am I serving? And so that's like sort of step one audit, right? Of what is the persona that I've actually attracted to this business? And we've suffered it to some extent in our own business, where we tell all of these deep, meaningful stories about our offering.
Yeah.
And again, we sprinkle in that money management component. Not to say we don't do it. Of course we do money management, but it as the differentiator. And then, oh no, who did we attract that has this different expectation about what we deliver? So that's one takeaway. Who have you attracted to your business? The other major takeaway that we talk about a lot, and we talked about the moment, the sort of planting the seed moment, audit that. And I mean specifically, when someone is referred to you who, let's say, is not seeking, is not expecting that when they walk into your office, you are going to explain how you get better returns. They're coming because they just got an inheritance or some life event, they're about to retire, they are selling a business, and their buddy, who's your client, introduced them to you, and they walk into your office. What do you say to them? What is happening in that intro discussion? To what extent are you telling the commoditized, I'm better at building portfolios story? 0%, 50%, that's your whole script. Where are you on that spectrum? Are you putting up slides
Right.
breaking down how you build portfolios and what products you select? And hey, I really like these managers because they do these things, and we like to be active here. And sometimes we tilt to the tech sector, but we do this and we do this. How much are you doing that in that intro meeting?
Yeah.
And the more you are, is then again embedding that in the experience. So because if you start there, right, if you assess that, then that inherently means your proposal meetings speak that language. It means before that, your discovery meeting, you're weaving in that language, your proposal meeting, how you onboard them, and every review meeting is, to whatever percentage you are on that spectrum, a conversation about the line items in your portfolio and how they've performed relative to benchmarks. So that's a first step. Doing that audit, that first moment, what story are you telling when they walk in your door? And then once you know that, you can make some decisions from there, right? How can we fix that moving forward?
Yeah, I think to add to that, because as you know, I'm a big fan of kind of going through your own experience or kind of going through your own process as if you were the client. Really, I think a lot of advisors they enjoy this. They're very interested in these topics. They enjoy talking about, thinking about investments, all of that stuff, right? So I think it's important when you are doing that audit and you are looking at every touch point within that experience, even if you just start with the prospect to client experience, right? What is on your website? What's that first touch email? What's that first screening call? What's in your discovery meeting? What are you sending as a follow-up? All of those touch points, really try your best to take yourself out of the seat of the advisor and not think about the behind the scenes process, and really just think about the ideal client that you want to serve and what are they bringing to the table. And then what expectations, what assumptions are they making? What connections are they making based on everything that you're putting in front of them and every moment that you're creating for them? I think that can really help any business. I mean, obviously, but especially if you feel like maybe this is something that you've struggled with, trying to take the advisor hat off and put on the client hat. It can also help if you have someone that you're close to who's in your target persona, like even if it's a spouse or a child or a family member that you can take through and really get some honest feedback on how does this make you feel? What are you thinking? What are you assuming? Just doing that audit and going through it slowly from the perspective of the client can be really helpful.
Yeah. So the first moment and then every moment. And I think a thing just to underline, it's easy to explain. No, it's easy to position the value of better portfolio management.
Right.
It's easy to tell that story. It's harder to explain the value, the qualitative value of holistic financial planning and being at the center of people's financial lives. That's a more nuanced, human, deep conversation.
Yeah.
That's hard to articulate.
You have to create intimacy to get there with the client. You're not just being an expert who's coming to the table.
That's exactly it. So people pick up on psychological, again, fear and greed, right? People hear better returns in my portfolio, I'm going to get more money, therefore I may be more financially secure. If that is embedded in any way, in any of the words you're using, the systems you're using, the things you're putting on a screen, the way your team members are talking to those prospects, they latch on to that, right? So in all of those moments, Kelsey, to your point, is that being dripped in anywhere? Because if it is, it will cause the problem in the future, right? So you have to be really careful about how you position. Again, money management, of course, it's what we do. It's table stakes. It's a component of holistic financial planning. And yes, we need to get good returns to align with your long-term financial objectives. Full stop, right? Full stop. Not the moment you get beyond that, even a little bit, it seeps into the rest of the relationship.
Yeah.
The one other thing, and I'm curious how you think about this, the operational side. So there's the client experience side, right? There's the expectations you're setting and that the experience you're creating longer term. But we also talk about, like, what does it mean if you tell that story? You then have to bring it to life. You have to do what you say by getting that better performance and building the custom solutions. So yeah, curious your thoughts on that side of it, the backstage aspect.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because, like you said before, of course this stuff is important. And of course you need to be getting good performance for your clients so they can meet their goals, right? what I think about a little bit, and I don't know if this is going to be where you thought I was going to go with this, but just the way I think about it is the way I think about our business. If you have a new client sitting in front of you, they are there for a reason, right? Something got them on that first call with you, or, they don't just come to a call for no reason. There's something going on that they're trying to solve for or get help with. And to onboard the client effectively, I always think about getting a quick win. We talk about this in our business a lot, right? At Seeds, getting a quick win is so important, and actually meeting the need that they came to for you to solve is so important. I think that when you're kind of doing this onboarding process and you're kind of talking about that initial need, and hopefully most advisors they're really trying to get to a sense of, why are you here? How can I help you? Can I help you? To then turn to this big money management story and talk about returns and talk about how you're going to get better performance potentially, or your way of doing this is better than the advisory on the street. You're then having to do both, right? You're then having to prove both at the beginning of that relationship. So you're kind of adding an extra, checkbox there that you're then having to meet to justify throughout the beginning of the relationship. Whereas you could more so just be focusing on whatever the win is that they came seeking. You know what I mean? So it does add complication, because it's not just about why they came to you. It's about what you're saying to them is why they should come to you. Because I don't think, at least I never hear that it's common. Like if I were seeking a financial advisor, I wouldn't be Googling which financial advisor in my area is going to get me the best returns. Like I actually have a life situation or something going on that I need help with, right? And that's the human part, why I'm seeking a human.
It's right there. They're handing you the answer, right?
You're overcomplicating it. Yeah.
We're just weirdly overcomplicating it. We're going on a different track, as opposed to, why have you showed up at my door? You clearly have booked this meeting for a reason other than, I think you can outperform the S&P 500. Right. There's the real tangible planning need. Again, thankfully, as an industry, we are 50 plus years into it. So the market hopefully does intuitively understand some of these other values that we deliver. So just lean into that, right? Yeah. Rather than telling a different story. It'd be like in the Seeds business, it'd be like, somebody fills out a web form to come see what we're doing at Seeds. And rather than, asking them why they filled out the web form and what they're trying to accomplish, we just started selling some other story that had nothing to do with our offering.
Without asking, right? Yeah, without asking the question, basically. Yeah. Because maybe they are there for returns, and if they are, let's go have that conversation. But if they're not, there's no need to overcomplicate it and then add the burden of delivering that at every touch point going forward. I also think of the advisor, I won't name him, but an advisor I spoke to recently who has never shown performance information ever to any of his clients. And he's well into his career. And it's because he heard very early on when he was learning how to become a planner about financial speed and how investments are really just, you need to be going in the right speed so you don't crash the car and so you don't not get there in time. And that's really what it's there for. And he just explains that to his clients, and it just becomes part of the conversation. Like, are we going at the right speed to meet the goal, but not so fast that we crash? And I think it's so interesting. It's an easy way to think about, again, this is just part of what you're already doing. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that, unless the client is coming in and straight up saying, that's why I'm here. I came to you for this very specific reason. And at that point, do you want them as a client? Well,
right, exactly. That leads to the destroy.
Yeah. Can you meet that need? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to meet that need? Or again, if you're thinking long term, how do you stop that, right? How do you stop telling that story and tell the story to tell? The example you just brought up too speaks to, again, all those moments in the relationship over time. If you ask, so they're coming with an issue that hopefully is not about just getting better returns. So you need to lean into that. But then it's just about asking the next question and the next question and the next question, and fully understanding exactly how they think from a planning perspective, from an investing perspective, from a values perspective, from a personal relationships perspective, everything. And that can then inform every interaction from there on out. So you walk into a portfolio review meeting, advisors are just sort of, we have this bias that every person under the sun whether we sold the story at the beginning or not, wants to see the nitty-gritty details of the portfolio returns every quarter we meet, and we spend a half an hour digging through the line items of the performance report. And what if you just ask the question at the beginning of the relationship, how important is that really? You have access to it whenever you want to click the button and see it. But how much of our interaction when we meet together do you want to spend on, how this line item did exactly?
Yeah.
Dissecting
like
the
the question
versus...
that I would have is, am I on track? And I know I'm a much more big picture person. So I want to know, like, personally, am I on track? I'm not sitting here waiting for someone to explain every detail of how the investments did, or every, I don't even know what, to be honest, coming from the planning side, because obviously my background is more on the planning tech side, the investments are like the most boring part. So I know that to advisors, they're not, but to someone who's not an advisor by practice, all of the other conversations about your life and are you secure? That to me is a lot. It's something that requires a human. It's something that requires like intimacy and trust that is built over time. Whereas going in and looking at a statement is not necessarily.
So imagine, and again, teeing up some future conversations, but imagine then you have a advisor or prospective advisor you're talking to that's the experience of a review meeting you have a quarter into your relationship with that advisor, where they're, for you, because they didn't ask the questions, they're pulling up that performance report and dissecting it. So again, as advisors think about long-term, how to attract the right customer base, how to support that customer base, how do we not sell, and how do we lean into why they're there in the first place, and then ask a few more questions to really deeply understand exactly why they're there, and then shape every interaction around that understanding. Mm-hmm. So lots to unpack on that front. I have one more just sort of thought before we get out of here. But when firms do tell this story, right, when you are selling this narrative, you have to operationalize it. So I touched on this a second ago, but you create this client experience bummer, but you also create inefficiencies as a business, right? So in other words, if you're selling, I build portfolios this way, I manage them this way, I use these managers, I plug this into this, I look at it and rebalancing and this and this and this, then you have to go do that. You have to hire the people to do that. You have to, try to stick a bunch of pieces of technology together to do that. It can become wildly inefficient and silly to actually operationalize those things behind the scenes, all the stuff that the customer doesn't even see. So yeah, you create this burden as a business where you could be out prospecting, you could be spending money on other technology solutions, you can be attracting the right type of customer, marketing, everything else. There's so much we should be doing as businesses to grow. And meanwhile, we're tinkering, at our Bloomberg terminal. That's an extreme example, but we're tinkering on our tech to build these portfolios and make these portfolio decisions that, again, maybe arguably the right type of customer could not care less about as part of your value proposition and differentiation. So that's just something else to think about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of like, without going into the details of the ops. That's exactly what I'm saying. When you're adding this additional burden that's not being asked, like this additional checkbox that's not being asked for, you have to then create all the systems to deliver upon that, and the people. You have to hire the people to help you deliver on that too. In some cases, so yeah, it can get pretty messy, and we've seen some examples of firms where it has gotten quite messy to try to deliver on that promise, for sure.
Yes, and exhausting. With that, before we land this plane, we're always talking to each other about what we're learning during the week. So Kelsey, tell me what you're excited about or what you've been learning.
Yeah, so I'm actually not excited about this, but I have been learning about the rules of the elf on the show. If there are any young listeners, I don't know why there would be, but maybe someone's playing this in their car.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
Turn the
volume down. But basically, we've just started doing this like this month, and I've already found ways to kind of mess it up. Like my kids know that the elf came from Amazon. I didn't realize the elf was supposed to magically appear. I thought it was like it became magic once you like activated it. So my kids knew that it came from Amazon, and they told their friends. at school that their elf came
Oh
from
my God, you
Amazon.
can't-
So now I'm basically ruining Christmas for my community here. So I'm now catching up on the rules of the elf on the shelf. So embarrassing.
The social contract.
The social
among
contract has been
parents,
broken. Yes.
That is horrifying.
I know.
Yeah, so you are that parent.
I am that parent.
A kid walked into school and just destroyed the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, my nanny, she was there and present when this happened, so she played it off with the little girl, my daughter's friend. But yes, it was definitely. So now I've been stress reading like what could be the rules in different households, just so like I'm prepared, because I was not prepared, which is why I never got an elf until like we finally broke down this year. My oldest daughter's 5.
Yeah.
We finally did it.
I will never do it for all of these reasons.
It's
I now
awful.
picture
It's
you
very
like,
stressful.
like writing like a Lord of the Rings level new narrative for Elf on the Shelf, so you can
We've
just
had to
re-script it for your kid.
That's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to really. They're fine. My kids are like, yeah, I came from Amazon. We activated it, but like now I'm like, but other kids like Santa sent it through Amazon. Amazon's got such a good distribution system. I'm like way overcomplicating it. So that's what I'm learning about. So if you haven't done something like that, if you have, I guess message me, find me on LinkedIn, message me, make me feel better, because I'm feeling pretty guilty about it.
Yeah, I have no solutions for you. In fact, I have in a similar vein thing going on. My 6-year-old lost her first baby tooth, and it was brutal, because I remember, she started kindergarten, and I thought that would hit me more emotionally when she started kindergarten, and it did. Not, I have a heart, and it was devastating. But for some reason, her losing her first baby tooth was just so weird. To
Really?
me, the fact that we're at that stage.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I think too, because I just hadn't Googled and remembered when that was supposed to happen. So she walked up to
Came
me,
out of nowhere.
whatever, a couple weeks ago or a week ago, and was like wiggling her tooth. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
how have we gotten here? But the tooth fairy, I'm dealing with the tooth fairy.
Yeah.
And, I grew up, I guess, it's the money under the pillow. First of all, the sneakiness level of trying to make sure that your kid is asleep to go get in there, get the tooth, get the money under the pillow. It was incredibly stressful. I did pull it off, but it started a whole bunch of conversations about why is the tooth fairy giving me money and what is money for? So it was an interesting, segue into some conversations about money that I'm sure will continue. But yeah, lots of questions about where the tooth fairy comes from. She asked if she's friends with Santa. I wasn't sure. I feel like we need
I need a
that
training.
social contract.
Should there be a training? I feel someone create a training. Yeah, no one's lost a tooth in my house yet. So let me know the rules. Let me know what's coming, because obviously I already failed at Elf on the Shelf. So
yeah,
I'm already learning, because you've committed. I think you mentioned that you put quite a bit of money under her pillow, and now you're stuck. You're gonna have to now shell out.
Oh yeah, I will. Again, I'm trying, of course, I'm trying to convey some basic money lessons here. And then I made a horrible first error with, I put $20 under her
only
pillow.
had a 20, so you're like, this will work.
It's just obscene. And then remembering, there's more than one tooth.
And more than one kid.
And then whatever it is, a year from now, when all these teeth fall out, she's going to have way too much money in her piggy bank. And what
money lesson are you teaching her?
Yeah, it's not good. It's very clearly antithetical to everything we talk about. So I'll have to unwind that in some way.
That's just like a first tooth magic of like, it's a celebration for your first tooth. And then it scales back.
You know what this is revealing? It's revealing just the level of lying we do.
You want to know what?
Children.
I have felt guilty about this since the moment I had Claire, my oldest. I have felt bad about this. That's why I've held off on Elf on the Shelf, because I have enough guilt about the Santa situation and the Easter Bunny situation. Like, it's very hard for me to. I have I usually am a truth teller with my kids, so it's very awkward. My husband is having to handle, not that he's like a good liar to our kids, but he's having to handle all these sneaky things because it's really tough. It's a lot of truth stretching,
Yeah, a lot to try to keep straight. Well, we promise we'll
Yeah.
we'll try to tell the truth as we continue the show moving forward in our episodes. We're going to do our best, but we'll leave it there. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you haven't already, go check out our company, Seeds. You can find us at www.seedsinvestor.com. Come do a demo, see what we do, try to sign up for our newsletter, and of course, come follow us on LinkedIn and X. We will see you next time.